I think I was 11 when we went to one of the military bases with the school excursion, and we had an opportunity to visit one of the helicopters. One of the pilots let us in to take the pilot seat, press some buttons, and then I came home. I said, that's it, I'm gonna be a pilot. As it was 2007, I think it was still the peak. So as the opportunity at that time was better, then I joined the university. There was still the national carrier in Lithuania. So we had some good options to become a pilot in that airline after graduation. But as the aviation is all the time ups and downs, so during the studies, there was a moment there was like nothing in Lithuania. So of course there was like what I'm gonna do once I'm finished, but I never gave up. So for me it was easy. Of course I had the goal that I must pass all the exams and I want to get the license to start flying as soon as I can. I found the option that there is a company in Lithuania. I wanted to work home, so I applied for the Wizz Air. But during the interview with HR, they said, is it only the one base you want, is it Vilnius? I said, no. If you pick me up as a pilot, I can work in any bases. I just want to start flying. The whole process, it took we had to wait 2 or 3 weeks after the interview. I was checking the email every day. And finally I got the answer that yes, I'm in. So I was very excited. After that, I had to take the type rating training in Toulouse, in Airbus Training Center. So I stayed there for 5 weeks. And during the interview, I met one guy from Latvia. He passed as well, so at least I know someone. I was not alone. In the group, I was the only girl at that time. We were 6 from Wizz Air and 2 from the other airline. It was hard, because you had to put so much information in your head. And it's different, it's a jet. And I was flying the single-engine aircraft before. Well, I never felt different, because I do the same job as a man. And if there's I don't know, bad weather or something else, I go out, I check the aircraft as the other pilots, so there's oh no, it's windy and raining and I cannot go. And one of the instructors, I think it was to inspire me, he said, I'm not a woman, I'm a pilot in my job. Job itself is not very hard, it's more maybe mental. You have to have some logics and mathematic thinking and to react less in situation. I think that it's a nice job for the girls as well. And it's very romantic, because I can see the sunrise and sunset, it depends on the day. And I see the stars, and at the 10 kilometers it's closer than from there. And I can see all the storms very close, but I think from a safe distance. If there is a good visibility, you can see a lot from the sky. So we're checking the cities, what we can see. So basically they say, okay, now I can go visually. And if we land, for example, for runway 19 in Vilnius, and you have a very nice view of the old town on a good day. So you can get a lot during the flight. There is ATC very helpful usually if you ask them.
My name is Nick Priest. I'm 25 years old. 5 years ago, I was studying audio engineering. But whilst I love music, on this journey, I discovered I love flying more. I believe everyone is capable of doing anything they set their mind to. For me, this was becoming an airline pilot. From the outset, I knew this was never going to be an easy task. Multiple exams, multiple flight tests, and hundreds of hours building flying experience. But fast forward 5 years and I'm flying the latest Boeing aircraft, the Boeing 787. My job now takes me around the world, traveling to destinations I had only ever read about. I wasn't born special. I wasn't born privileged. I simply did the one thing everyone is capable of doing. I made a choice to not let life pass me by. A choice to turn my passion into a reality. My name is Nick Priest. I believe everyone is capable of doing anything they set their mind to. It's time for you to unleash your potential.
4000, Eagle 3937. Maintain 170. Canada 895, maintain present speed, so to maintain 1.
Let me start by answering the most common question I get asked. Who do I work for? So at the moment I'm choosing not to say who I work for specifically, and there is a few reasons behind that, but the main one being just my own privacy. I know that may sound a little bit odd considering I'm in social media and I put my life out there, but this is just one thing I want to keep private, at least for now anyway. So as you heard from that brief intro video, I didn't begin my aviation studies straight after high school like a lot of other pilots. This is because during high school I was heavily involved in music, and when I was choosing all my final subjects for high school, I based them all around continuing my music studies after I finished high school. Many of you might be surprised to hear, but I didn't study physics or any science subjects during my final years at high school. Obviously I did study English and maths, which were prerequisites to get into aviation. Now don't get me wrong, I've always loved aviation and loved flying. In fact, I've been around aviation my whole life, as my dad is also a pilot. Growing up, I would always see how much he was studying, and I guess like a lot of people, I didn't like studying either. So at the time, I therefore thought I couldn't actually become a pilot because I didn't think I'd make it through all the flying training and all the exams. Even though I loved aviation, I loved the thought of one day becoming an airline pilot. So after graduating from high school, I went on to study audio engineering, and whilst I enjoyed it, I began to realize I couldn't see myself doing this for the rest of my life, which is when I decided to reevaluate what I could see myself doing for the rest of my life. And what do you know, becoming a pilot kept coming up. After looking around at my options, I decided to apply for a cadetship program, which is the quickest and fastest way in this day and age to becoming an airline pilot. This was quite a long process, with the first step being submitting a one-page essay as to why you thought the cadetship was a good or bad idea as compared to the typical route to becoming an airline pilot, which the typical route is getting your PPL and CPL and then going to work for whoever, wherever, and building hours to eventually apply for an airline. If successful from this first step, you're then invited to day one of assessment, which basically was assessing if you were right for a job with an airline. This involved maths, physics, aviation knowledge, cognitive skills, coordination and control, technical aptitude, and finally a personality questionnaire. You then found out later on that day if you were successful and invited to attend day 2 of the assessment process. Day 2 involved group exercises which tested your skills in problem solving, verbal reasoning, communication, teamwork, and group discussion. The group exercises were then followed by an individual behavioural interview with a panel of 4 to 5 assessors asking you scenario-based type questions, which I believe is designed to test your motivation and suitability for a career in the commercial aviation industry. We then found out a few weeks later if we were successful from day 2 and invited to attend an interview with the airline itself, involving a pilot from the airline and a HR manager. This interview involves scenario type questions again, assessing your motivation and cultural fit within the airline you were applying for. A few weeks after this, you received an email saying whether you'd been accepted into the cadetship program or not. I still remember to this day when I found out I was successful, I actually couldn't believe it. It was such a surreal feeling knowing that I was going to eventually become an airline pilot. But I now knew the hard work was about to start in the training. If you're watching this video and want to become an airline pilot, by far a cadetship is the quickest way to get into an airline. Although it's not the only way, so if you're not interested in a cadetship program, that's totally fine as well. But if you are interested in applying for a similar cadetship that I undertook, I encourage you to do your own research, but last time I looked, within Australia, I know that Qantas, Jetstar and Virgin all have cadetship. As far as overseas go, again I encourage you to do your own research, but I know that Emirates, Cathay Pacific and China Southern have cadetships as well. So I started my training when I was 20 and finished when I was 22. And by this time the airline industry had slowed down quite a bit from taking on any new pilots. And although I completed training with the proviso that I would have a job at the end of my training, the airline had to actually be hiring pilots for that to come to fruition. From the time I finished my cadetship training, I ended up having to wait almost 12 months before I finally got the phone call officially offering me a position with the company on a Boeing 787, which, being a long-haul aircraft and flying internationally, I would start as a second officer, hence the 2 stripes.